Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. If you absolutely insist that I have to move the pallet immediately, then move it I will. I'm a retail merchandiser. I assist with refits and new store setups, or sometimes just get sent to be an extra pair of hands where a store has too many people off sick or on holiday. And even during refits, we're sometimes expected to work the delivery for the aisles that we've been rearranging that night, as the store's own staff have, for obvious reasons, been unable to access them all night. On this particular shift, we'd been doing the beers, wines, and spirits section. Now, this is the sort of shift where you're practically guaranteed to get some wastage. Bottles smash, cans split, it's just accepted as the price of moving literally hundreds of them in the course of a single night. All you can do is hope you're not the one who goes home smelling like a brewery. We'd finished up the actual move and had started working the 6 pallets of delivery as well, but the store manager was fretting. He was starting to get very antsy about our chances of finishing up and clearing the floor before the store opened for the day, and his main concern was about how we were handling the overstocks. We had absolutely blitzed the first pallet, all hands working it and it alone, in order to empty it so we could stack the overstocks onto it. As soon as the last case of booze was removed from the blue boards, we moved the overstocks onto it and then split up to work the other 5 pallets simultaneously. As we worked, we added more to the first pallet. When we're in luck, we can get the overstocks from 6 pallets of delivery onto a single pallet. By the time the manager came around dragging a pump truck with him, the stack was about 4 boxes high, about hip height on me. It wasn't the prettiest pallet stack you've ever seen, but it was stable while it wasn't moving. Someone had gone to fetch a roll of pallet wrap so we could move it safely, but that's the sort of thing that store staff tend to hide and guard jealously, so we knew he'd be gone a while. Manager, what's this pallet? Someone. Delivery overs? Manager, needs to be off the floor. Someone else. Coworker's gone to get the shrink. Manager, I want it gone now. Team leader, not safe to move without wrap. Manager, you don't need that if it's stacked properly. Move it now. At that point, he shoved the handle of the pump truck at the closest person, which was me, and he stood back to make sure that we removed the pallet from the shop floor. Now, I'm not the best pump truck operator in the world. I have a lack of proprioception that extends to anything that I'm pushing, pulling, carrying, or steering. Normally, I wouldn't go anywhere near a pallet of glass bottles, but everyone else backed away. They knew what would happen if anyone jacked that pallet up and tried to move it, and they wanted no part of it. The manager obviously wanted it moving, though, and it was his store. So I carefully got the forks under the pallet, no ramming it in for this baby, gently lifted it off the floor and started moving as smoothly as I could. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, enter the slalom of bakery tables and fridges between alcohol and warehouse. I surprised myself by getting past the individual rolls table without incident, but when I started to maneuver around the cream cakes fridge, I heard the unmistakable sound of bottles smashing. I looked behind me to confirm it. A corner of the pallet had decided to acquaint itself with the linoleum-covered concrete floor. Wine, whiskey, vodka, and rum were all mixed in a spreading puddle on the floor. Oh, and on the manager who'd been following behind, presumably wanting his pump truck back once the pallet was stowed away, who hadn't bothered to try and stabilize the collapsing boxes. My team leader had also been following at a more sensible distance. Team leader, looks like it needed wrapping. It'd be perfect if your team leader said that in an emotionless, monotone voice. Who got the job of mopping the floor, your crew or the store's day shift? And our second story. Take my car? I hope your eardrums bleed. So the Sunday after Thanksgiving, my dad had a heart attack and was in a coma. His sister became his power of attorney while he was incapacitated, and she worked in cahoots with their other sister to make life miserable for my sister and me. Their first act was to take our cars, because the titles are in my dad's name and they're evil B-words. They took my sister's car that she's been driving for 6 years the next day, and one of them sent me a message saying that if I didn't return the car I was driving, that they would call the police and report it as stolen. I don't live in the same city as them, so eventually I decided it's not worth the hassle of dealing with the cops and I turned the car over. But first, I used up all the windshield wiper fluid, I turned the Bluetooth language to French, I took out the registration and proof of insurance, and I turned the volume all the way up in the car so that when they went to turn it on, the sound would hit them at full blast. Take that, you B-word. I'd thought about leaving the car in a tow-away zone hundreds of miles away, but they would just use my dad's money to get it back, so I decided against it. Edit. I did contact a lawyer who advised me to give the car back. My dad made her power of attorney before he had the heart attack and acted when he was incapacitated. As his DPOA, his sister has the legal right to say that we stole my dad's cars. The police would have to choose whether they believe us or them, and at that point I was so exhausted with the whole situation and emotionally drained, I just gave it up without much of a fight. I haven't spoken to any of his family since that Sunday. Update and more info. A lot of people have been asking about my dad. He's doing a bit better. He's no longer in a coma. However, he is on dialysis. He's able to speak and eat, but I think there may have been brain damage. He has a hard time focusing on conversation topics and switches from topic to topic to topic in the middle of a sentence. He also talks a lot about the military and staging a military operation. My dad was never in the military, but it could be the meds talking. He's still in the hospital, and a cognitive assessment hasn't been done. Some people are wondering why my dad's sister is his DPOA rather than my sister or I. I believe my dad put misguided faith into his sister, and he probably genuinely believed that his siblings would act in his best interest. I think he chose his sister rather than me and my sister because we're still young, relatively speaking, early to mid-20s, and he may have thought his sister better able to handle the responsibility. I honestly can't say for sure. His sisters are absolute B-words, though. Why are they being so nasty to us? Because they're evil. I'm not a religious person, but I believe there's the devil inside of them. 100%. The devil. My mom thinks that they're jealous of my sister and I because we're successful and they weren't, and neither are their kids, dropouts, pregnant early. They think he should have stopped taking care of us after he and my mom divorced. Want to hear the nasty other crap they did? When my dad first had his heart attack, they shooed us out of his room saying they needed to talk about medical stuff regarding him, but they didn't actually discuss anything. They told the nursing staff we weren't really his children and shouldn't be there. One of them, the ringleader, we'll call her Thing 1, claims I pushed her and that I put my hands on her when I bumped into her after she blocked the doorway to the hallway where my dad's room was in ICU. She moved in front of my right as I was moving to go through the doorway and then starts telling everyone I pushed her and she's going to get me banned from the hospital. She was later threatening to hit me as I had to be removed from the hospital. This B-word is a grown but woman, late 50s, early 60s, threatening to hit a 23-year-old girl. They made a list of approved visitors and left it with the nurses station. Of course, his own children weren't on it. Thing 1 said that we were only coming around because we felt guilty and we were after his money. I think the opposite's true. It came out that Thing 1 used to be a crackhead. I've always been there for my dad. Whenever he needed anything, I went ahead and did it for him. There was a time earlier this year where we were concerned about his diabetes and I made his meals for him for weeks until he had a fit and said he didn't want my help anymore. I've never asked my dad for money. Never. I've never had to ask my dad for anything because he always provided for us. I love my dad more than anything. He's the best man I know. I think my dad just had the wool pulled over his eyes about his sisters. They never do this underhanded crap in front of him. When he woke up, he was coherent enough to be livid about what they did with the cars. But the in-between time, I went ahead and bought my own car because even if I did get the car back from him, the next time he's unable to make decisions, the same crap will happen. I personally haven't told him about all the other crap they did to be mean to us because I don't feel like I should try and vilify his sisters to him. I don't know what all my sister has told him. I don't want him to feel like he has to choose us or them, and I don't want him to worry about his sisters being evil C-words when he should be focusing on his recovery. So that's everything in a not-so-small nutshell. My dad told me the last time I was up to the hospital that Christmas would be late. I told him the only thing I want for Christmas is to see him well and walking again. This is great. What evil ants? Lose the insurance and registration so they have to go to the DMV? That's such a genius move on your part. And our last story. The city wanted to take away 10 feet of the property. While I was in college, I lived with my uncle because he was close to school. He had a property adjacent to a church. Each property was about 2 acres, and while my uncle's house was in the middle of his, the church was all the way on the opposite end of theirs. Part of my rent was mowing all around my uncle's property, push mower. I was actually living in an RV that faced the church and started mowing part of the church's property so that when they dissed the field, they wouldn't get so close to my RV. I was mowing like 80 feet of their property. That kind of made it look like my uncle's. One day, a for sale sign goes up in the empty field. We inquired, and it seems the church needed some money and decided to subdivide. Okay. Well, some people bought the property and some dirt work started. My uncle decided he'd rather have a fence than look at construction if he's going to lose the view of the church, so he builds one 10 feet back from his property line. We moved my RV a bit so it's behind the fence. I kept mowing the 80 feet outside the fence as we were still responsible for 10 and neighbors were used to cutting through there on foot, so no big deal. We kept it nice. It took about a year for the house to get built, and at some point they put up a fence 20 feet from our fence, which I thought was nice of them to allow neighbors to walk through. I had much less to mow, the space looked nice and became a weird hangout for teens to go kissing. Then one day the police roll up and ask me not to mow city property anymore. There were some suit-wearing guys with hard hats that explained a jogging path was going in. They didn't want the liability of my possibly hurting myself. I explained that 10 feet of it was my uncle's property, so I thought. I asked about right of domain, and they showed me the old city map where a road was supposed to go through 50 years ago, and the city kept pushing it off until the area got developed. It was supposed to be an 80-foot swath, and they're concerned it's only 20 now. Surveyors came out, they put markers all down the middle of the strip. Then we found out the neighbor's new house was built partially on the road area. They had a choice to tear down the house or buy 10 feet from the city, so they did the latter and they lost a good chunk of yard. Their fence was moved at the cost of the city as they put fence everywhere that didn't have any. My uncle tore his fence down to regain his 10 feet. The strip now has a bench and a bunch of small trees and about a 10-foot asphalt jogging path. The teens didn't even slow down during construction. It's ironic how the very act of trying to maintain the property inadvertently led to the uncovering of historical city plans and the need for adjustments. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.